Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. New information on what the Chinese surveillance balloon was capable of as it hovered over the U.S. Today, senior administration officials from the White House briefed senators on the issue. Here's NTD's Melina Wisecup with more.
Urging on the CCP spy balloon, uncovering the first proof that it was indeed on an espionage mission because it did contain devices meant to intercept sensitive communications. A State Department official speaking anonymously to the Epoch Times said that it had multiple antennas to include an array likely capable of collecting and geolocating communications. It was also equipped with solar panels large enough to produce enough power to operate multiple active intelligence collection sensors. The Chinese regime is now accusing the U.S. of engaging in information warfare against China because these new discoveries directly contradict the previous claim by China that this was a weather balloon. Senators did receive a closed-door briefing by White House officials on the issue, and after that briefing, I asked many senators what is their current assessment of the level of threat that this balloon posed, and we got mixed reactions. Here's a look.
Whether there was a threat or not, and I don't believe there was a threat, there wasn't.
I also think there was a real threat to civil aviation. If not, why did the FAA issue ground stoppages? There are airplanes in parts of the country that couldn't fly for a defined period of time.
Even what I am saying, they didn't send it over here by accident.
Number one takeaway is that the Chinese Communist Party, on issues like this, they don't tell the truth, right? They lie.
I think the balloon presented a very low level threat. In the aftermath of this story, we can maybe talk about the real threats posed to the United States by China.
Other activities like what?
Well, like their propaganda efforts, like the amount of fentanyl that's being sent from China into the United States.
This is believed to be just a part of the communist regime's fleet of balloons that has been in operation for several years, traveling across at least 40 countries. I asked a few senators how they believe Western countries should respond now. Here's what they told me.
We need to come together and recognize that there is really clear and present danger, increasingly so. They are a persistent threat. My question really is, why we are so late to the game.
The entire civilized world should recognize that communist China is probably the gravest threat we've ever faced, more severe than Soviet Russia was. So we should take every step we can to try to reduce our dependency on China, to try to build stronger military deterrence against them, and make it clear that we're going to defend freedom in the civilized world.
And Melina, we know that the House also took action today with a resolution. Tell us about it.
The House, on a vote of 419-0, decried this act by the CCP as a brazen violation of U.S. sovereignty. And while both parties have disagreements about whether or not the administration handled this specific issue appropriately, there is more of a bipartisan consensus about the need for the U.S. to counter China more broadly. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
President Biden traveling to Florida, warning voters there about what he calls a GOP plan to cut Social Security. But the plan's author says that's not true. NTD's Iris Tao brings us more.
A heated back and forth between Biden and Republicans. The president traveling to Tampa, Florida to bash what he calls a GOP plan to cut Social Security and Medicare.
And now these guys want to cut it. I don't get it. I really don't.
It's a theme that Biden's been hitting hard, especially during his State of the Union address.
We saw on Tuesday night Republicans don't like me being called out on this. A lot of Republicans, their dream is to cut Social Security and Medicare.
But Republicans say that's not true. Senator Rick Scott, the Florida Republican whose plan Biden's targeting, says his proposal is to sunset all federal legislation every 5 years. The goal is to slash unnecessary programs while keeping the ones that are needed.
Nobody believes that I want to cut Medicare or Social Security. I've never said it. I don't believe in that. I think we've got to preserve those benefits.
Scott further hits back by calling Biden's attack a lie. He asked in Wednesday's statement if Biden thinks it also intends to get rid of the U.S. Navy and Border Patrol, which are also federal programs. And amid negotiations over the debt ceiling, the House Speaker has also assured
cuts to Medicare and Social Security
They're off the table.
But the White House is not buying that. Listen to how the press secretary responds to Senator Scott's defense Thursday morning.
Scott's now calling for would be the largest cut to Medicare benefits in decades. Every time Rick Scott opens his mouth, he proves the president's point.
And now Senator Scott is inviting Biden to have a debate on the issue, saying on Thursday, quote, "I'll be back in Florida tonight. You pick the time and place." Reporting from the White House, Iris Howe, NTD News.
Welcome back to NTD's Capitol Report. I'm Steve Lance. In a newly formed committee, Republicans want to know if the federal government has been weaponized against its own citizens. Democrats argue that the new committee is a waste of time. NTD's Jason Perry has the story.
Congress held its first hearing on the weaponization of the federal government, and Senator Chuck Grassley alleged the FBI continually interfered with his investigation into Hunter Biden's foreign business dealings. He said he was accused of spreading Russian disinformation.
We acquired authentic bank records that substantiated findings of our previous two reports. They financially linked Hunter Biden and James Biden to entities and individuals connected with the communist Chinese regime. Are these official bank records Russian disinformation?
Senator Ron Johnson testified about his experiences with alleged weaponization of the federal government.
My first investigation ultimately revealed the extensive editing of then FBI Director James Comey of his July 5, 2016 statement that exonerated Secretary Clinton regarding her use of a private email server for official business. The edits were clearly made to downplay the seriousness of her actions. It is important to note those partisan edits were made by the same cast of characters in the FBI that would initiate and drive the corrupt Russian-Trump collusion investigation.
A former FBI special agent said he thinks the problem is because the power within the FBI has been centralized at the top.
Traditionally in the FBI, field agent had an investigation. He had a field supervisor above him. Above him was the agent in charge of that office. Only then did the information and the decision-making go to FBI headquarters. What happened under Mueller's centralized thing, all of that was eliminated. They ran these key investigations, the Hillary Clinton email investigation and then the Trump collusion investigation, out of headquarters, eliminated all these layers of independent judgment, supervision, gone.
And Senator Jamie Raskin gave examples of the alleged weaponization of the federal government during the Trump administration.
Breaching the traditional separation between the president and Department of Justice criminal prosecutions, Trump and his obliging sycophantic attorney generals like Jeff Sessions and William Barr repeatedly pressured career prosecutors to go hard or go soft in particular cases, always seeking to reward Trump's friends or to punish his enemies. If weaponization of the Department of Justice has any meaning, this is it.
Jason Perry, NTD News.
Does the House GOP have a good reason to worry about the DOJ being used as a weapon to target Americans? I sat down with Louisiana Attorney General Jeff Landry and asked him about it. We also talked about his recent action to protect kids from sexually explicit materials, which is catching headlines in his home state of Louisiana. Louisiana Attorney General Jeff Landry, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I'd like to get your thoughts. House GOP Judiciary Chair Jim Jordan he held a hearing today on the weaponization of the Department of Justice. As Attorney General of your state, what do you make of that?
I wrote a great op-ed on the weaponization of the Department of Justice many, many months ago. I can tell you there's not a finer man in this country to lead those investigations than Jim Jordan. I served in Congress with him. He's an honorable person. He will get down to the bottom of it. We're seeing an unsettling of our federal government. It is not operating as a government that serves the people. More like the attitude is the people serve the government. And I have that censorship case. We've talked about it here at Epoch, where we have seen the federal government basically censor American speech. That is part and parcel to the weaponization of the Department of Justice. If they can silence you, then they can force your particular conduct. And so I applaud the House leadership and Jim and them for working to get into the bottom of that. And then it's important not only to expose that to the American people, but then to take some actions, to build some parameters inside of DOJ, the FBI, other federal institutions to ensure that they're not able to turn those agencies against the American people.
One thing that President Biden pointed out in his speech was police brutality. You're the top law enforcement official in your state. You also wore the badge yourself. What is the true situation in the police departments in your state and around the country?
Well, look, you know what? It's amazing because we all know that there are bad apples in all bunches. There certainly are bad lawyers, bad doctors, bad engineers. The list goes on. Everyone has bad professions. It's important that you clean those up. We've always, and police officers always do that. The ones that I've known really like to clean up our own because we don't want people to think we're a bad lot, right? I remember when I wore a badge, we didn't tolerate bad police officers. And what is amazing is actually over the last 6 or 7 years, when you've actually seen incidents under which cops actually operated outside of the four corners of the law worked. And those police officers were prosecuted. I prosecuted 2 police officers during my tenure that I can think of in a shooting. Just that they were wrong, they went to jail. But yet the media, the mainstream media, doesn't portray that. They just want to paint the whole bunch of us as a bad bunch. And I think that's unfair. And I also think it's dangerous. I think that basically the violent crime that is sweeping this country is really based upon this notion that police officers are bad. No one wants to go into the profession anymore. Police officers really are thinking twice about actually doing the patrolling because they're like, look, we don't want to be in the spotlight. We don't want to be fired. They do a dangerous job. Each and every one of those men and women, each and every day, put on a uniform, put on a badge, and they don't know whether they're coming back or not. I mean, heaven knows the number of officers that we buried in this country, and yet what's amazing is that we've highlighted more mistakes rather than all of the heroic efforts that happen each and every day protecting Americans.
You just released a report that's making headlines right now. It's called the Protecting the Innocence of Children report. Tell us about that and why you released it.
Well, a couple of reasons. Number one, as the Attorney General, I run the Internet Crimes Against Children's Task Force. So we see the things, the people who prey upon our children in Louisiana, around this country, each and every day. We do our best to arrest those people. What we're consistently seeing is like a desensitizing of children. We started getting complaints from parents about 6 months ago about books that they were finding in the library, books that anyone had access to. We launched an investigation. We then opened a hotline so parents could tell us about the complaints, the things they saw, what they thought should happen. We compiled that into a report and then we issued it. It's on our website at agjefflandry.com. And if you are 18 years or older, you can access that report because what you see in that report is some of the pictures that are actually in books that have open access in into libraries. And what our report does is it empowers parents. It educates parents in Louisiana, and if they believe that these are books that are inappropriate for minors, how they can go about making sure that the policies in their local libraries restrict the access of those books to certain age groups.
Some have said that you've received some pushback from the LGBT community in your state. What do you say to these groups that may see a news report and think you're against them? What do you say to them?
Yeah, again, look, we see way more people trying to divide us than unite us. I would certainly encourage them to go and read the report. This is about what's appropriate for minors. I've spoken to people of all walks of life, of different political parties, and when we show them the content that is in our libraries and then with unfettered access, they're like, no, something needs to be done. There needs to be some parameters. And so that's what this report does.
Louisiana Attorney General Jeff Landry, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.